I want to stay in the NFL because the team that is just 3 hours down the road from me, the Seattle Seahawks, or as I like to call them this year, the Seattle Sleepers, because the Seahawks are flying under the radar more than they have since last year. To be honest with you, they really fly under the radar quite a bit. They're not exactly the Dallas Cowboys, but the reason the Seahawks are flying so under the radar is because their defense last year almost inexplicably just took a massive step back after what looked like it was going to be a fantastic defense going into the season. So the reason why is the rookies from 22, 23, Charles Cross, Abraham Lucas, they're two tackles. And then they drafted Tariq Woolen, Kobe Bryant, and Boy Mafi, who are all solid defensive players. And they had a fantastic rookie season, all of them. The Seahawks looked like they had one of the best young cores coming up, to be honest with you. They just didn't really have a quarterback set, but their defense looked young. Their offense is still exciting with Metcalf and Lockett, but none of them really took that sophomore step after their rookie season. They all just kind of stayed with the status quo. And the next year, besides drafting Jackson Smith and Jigba and Devon Witherspoon, apologies, their draft in 23 was pretty to very underwhelming. Even Jackson Smith and Jigba, I don't think Seahawks fans were exactly thrilled with his rookie season. Witherspoon's obviously one of the best young corners in the world, so no question there. But the one thing that we seemingly never realize until the playoffs are set is that there are at least 2 to 3 new playoff teams in each conference every single year. The turnover doesn't seem apparent when we're just looking at 1 through 53 on paper going into a year because we just think the same teams that were good last year, they probably added some good players, so they're going to be good again this year. Shallow way of looking at it. It's just not how the NFL has worked for the past 100 years. And as I looked at the Seahawks roster, coming into this training camp, I really started to believe that the Seahawks could be one of those new teams that squeak into the playoffs this year. So, a couple reasons why. First of all, Geno Smith is anywhere from the 14th to the 18th best quarterback in the NFL. There's really no doubt about that. But the thing is, he's surrounded by weapons that help prop him up and make him look like a top 10 quarterback for a lot of the time. Now, this is a lot to do with the quarterback chameleon theory, where there's tiers of quarterbacks, and one of them is the guy who is completely dependent on his surroundings. If he's in a great offense with great skill position people, he'll look great. If he's in a bad offense with he'll look terrible. Geno Smith is a quarterback chameleon. And Tyler Lockett is 31, but he's still got some juice to him. He never takes hits, so that body's more like it's 25. And DK and Jackson Smith and Jigba are straight up players in that offense. And Kenneth Walker's a solid running back. I hate to see the injuries he dealt with last year, but he should come back better. Fant is a super serviceable tight end. I loved him in Denver, just liked him just as much in Seattle. And I like most of their O-line. The tackles are solid, and they just drafted a guard in the 3rd round who looks like he's going to start for them, which is a good sign. But before I get to the defense, what you're probably saying is, well, they had all of those weapons last year, and they went 9-8, and they didn't make the playoffs. Well, first of all, 9-8 is pretty good. 9-8 will get you into the playoffs probably one every 2-3 years, but they didn't last year just because the Rams were a wild card team and they were 10-7 in their own division. So it was just some bad luck, but they were still a solid team last year, which people just seem to forget. People look at the Seahawks' season last year as a failure, which it was, but that underestimates how talented the roster was and how well they played, even with being pretty decimated by injuries throughout the majority of the season. But the main reason that I believe they will be a playoff team this year is because of the other side of the ball. the defensive side of the ball. Now, Mike McDonald is a complete wild card. I will completely admit that. I've never seen him coach, and you never know how a head coach is going to head coach until he head coaches. But he was the defensive coordinator for the Baltimore Ravens. And Seattle's issue on defense last year wasn't necessarily their coverage. It was the fact that they couldn't get to the passer at all. They were bottom 5 in quarterback pressure last year. So if any coach is going to help dial up some pressure for a football team, it is Mike McDonald. Because if you watch that Ravens defense the past couple of years, they would have the most extravagant blitz packages. They would get pressure with 4 because of those extravagant blitz packages. And just overall, the quarterback never, ever looked comfortable during their time playing the Ravens. Like, I remember when the Ravens played the Lions last year, and it was evident from the first drive, going up against the best offensive line in the NFL, the Ravens just were better prepared to apply pressure to Goff, and Goff folded. So when it comes to a head coach, I feel like there isn't a more perfect fit than a guy who's known for his defensive pressure schemes coming to a team whose biggest issue last year by a mile was putting pressure on the quarterback. They also drafted tackle Byron Murphy in the first round, which should help a bit with interior pressure. Overall, I just don't see why the Seahawks can't win 9-10 games again this year. And will that be enough to make the playoffs? I think so, because the NFC, it's a little better this year than it was last year. I'll admit, on paper it is. But there are a bunch of teams that I just don't believe in. The entirety of the NFC East, I don't believe in this year. They're the Falcons, who I'm about to get to. Like, there are a couple of squads that I could absolutely see taking a fall, and Seahawks just maintaining the status quo, getting a little better, and getting into the playoffs this year. I think Seattle's a real sleeper, and I think their over-unders at 7.5. I would hammer that over. Absolutely.